If your parents reject you, you don't have another set of parents to pitch to. I actually proposed less equity for myself when I first joined. I think entrepreneurship is inherently very queer.
Building a company is rarely about the idea. It's about the parts of yourself you're forced to confront while building it. My guest today is Jaron So, the co-founder of Voda, a mental health platform built by and for the LGBTQ plus people. Jaron built multiple companies, went to Antler's first London cohort, raised capital, and learned firsthand how imposter syndrome, shame, and identity shape the founders make decisions. Let's hear directly from him.
Hi, I'm Jaron. I'm co-founder of Voda. We are a mental health companion app designed by and for LGBT people. We address LGBT-specific issues that mainstream apps don't address. So things like coming out, gender dysphoria, which a lot of trans people experience, queer shame, but also societal issues like hate speech, stigma, and discrimination.
Let's go back to that spark that you had of entrepreneurship.
The spark for Voda, I think, came from a very young age for me. So I grew up in Singapore for most of my life. So I was there until 18 years old. And I knew I was gay from a very young age. And before I knew what the word gay meant, I knew it was something that I couldn't be because of society and because of the messages that I was getting from the news, from TV, from my parents, and from the adults around me. The spark for entrepreneurship that you kind of talked about for me, I don't think it was necessarily the spark.
You mentioned that you were brought up in Singapore and the climate there in general was not very welcoming towards LGBT people. And then you mentioned that you moved to London. How did that feel like when you moved to London?
So up until 2 years ago, it was technically illegal to be gay in Singapore, such that there was a Section 377A of the Penal Code criminalized same-sex activity between men. And there was a colonial era law that we had, a relic of British colonization. So growing up under that was very hard because most of my life I had to hide who I was from people around me. So I think a lot of queer people can relate to this sense of hypervigilance of like, okay, I'm always, from a very young age, I was always very anxious and always policing the way I talked, the way I walked, the way I dressed. I was very worried that any of these things might give away that I'm gay, that then it was something that I couldn't become. At the same time, then I will lose all the love and support I have around me. But coming to London for the first time, I think I still had a lot of unaddressed shame. But for the first time, I think a lot of queer people can understand coming to London from Singapore was that I didn't have to fear perhaps, going on dates. I could actually go on dates and not fear if I might bump into a relative or a friend who I'm not out to. So coming to London to study and going to LSE to study was, I think, really changed my life and for a lot better.
You also built your first venture at LSE. Tell me a little bit about Artisan and Fox.
So in LSE, there is a student entrepreneurship competition called LSE Generate. And when I was a student, I won the student competition, the pitch competition. And that gave me the little bit of seed funding that I needed to start my first business. So my first business, Artisan and Fox. This is the logo, actually. I'm not sure if you could see. Artisan and Fox is an e-commerce marketplace, but we're specifically focused on artisans across the majority world. We work with those makers and we brought them online. And the aim was to really spotlight the human stories behind how things were made. And I think in this era of overconsumption, but also at the same time, give them a very fair and ethical wage. So we share profits equally with the makers instead of having a huge markup. So that was my first time in starting a business. And it was a great experience. We also ended up opening one of the world's first store for refugee craftsmanship with the UNHCR.
What did a day in the life of Jaron look like while working there?
I was very lucky that I got to travel to meet artisans. I was invited to go to Kabul in Afghanistan to work with the local makers there. So this was, years before the Taliban unfortunately took over. And so I was able to then run a crowdfunding campaign for Artisan and Fox. So I think we raised about $30,000 in pre-orders for craftsmanship. So that was like a Kickstarter campaign that we did. So doing that whilst in university was really great. So I was just running around doing a bunch of different things and trying to make it all work.
You were a part of the Antler's first cohort, which is quite popular now, Antler.
So Artisan Fox was never a venture-backable business because of the nature of craftsmanship. Artisans could only make, say, 20, 30 units a month. And so there is inherently really high unit marketing costs to get something online to the website. And at the same time, if something was really popular, you can really make more at short notice. So I never really learned how to raise venture funding or build a venture-backable business whilst building Artisan and Fox. But Antler, for the first time, I think gave me that education that I really needed. So shortly after graduating from LSE, I was also looking for my next challenge, and I then applied to Antler. So Antler was just setting up its first cohort in London. It was also a life-changing experience for me because it really widened my network, and I also learned then how to raise investment from venture capital firms or angel investors, but also the way, I guess, the rules of the game that you need to play to be in the space. I remember having huge imposter syndrome when I was at Antler. I actually thought it was a mistake that I got in. People here are like 5-6 years at Uber, at Meta, at Google, and I felt very out of place, actually. I was also then very desperate to prove myself. In a few weeks, I formed a team, and we managed to build this two-sided marketplace, a talent marketplace that helps people hire digital marketers. So within a few weeks, we had a landing page, working product, and we had clients already. So when we went to investment committee, we then raised venture. I mean, for me, that was the first time raising venture. And so that was a really good experience for me. I felt like I learned a lot, but I think my mental health was all over the place during that time as well because I was really quite insecure. I was really afraid people wouldn't work with me. So I didn't actually have not told many people this, but I actually proposed less equity for myself. When I first joined, we were 3 founders, and I was like, you guys have 35% each because you both have so much more experience. One guy's ex-Uber, and another guy was like over 10 years as a CTO. I was like, I'm just getting started. And and then I actually had less equity. I had 30%. Now, looking back, I wouldn't have done that because I think I was being in that space. I then realized actually a lot of us, I didn't know that much less than everyone else. So a lot of people that would have been in huge corporate roles for 15 to 20 years also kind of struggle in Antler because they would just have these hours-long meetings with a whiteboard in a meeting room. And then after 2 months, they still like nothing. They spend so much time discussing and writing documents that they have not actually tried to build a website or get someone to market right away.
You mentioned you proposed less equity for yourself.
It was really mainly imposter syndrome of, gosh, feeling really stressed, really fearful of how I'm perceived, and whether really questioning whether I'm good enough to be there. I think that thread also goes very much, perhaps, from my childhood experiences of being gay, though. I think I often have entered rooms thinking that I'm not supposed to be here, even though I was kind of out already. I think my mind constantly was searching for something to go wrong and it kind of latches itself onto that in ways that I had not realized back then. But now I definitely, after years of therapy, don't really struggle with, oh, I don't belong in a room. Even if I was in a space where there were people that are a lot more accomplished than me, I would think, well, you're more accomplished than me, but I wouldn't think that you are, say, inherently better or more worthy to be in the space.
Was that what contributed to you building Voda?
Whilst I was building traction, I had a chance to access therapy for the first time in my life. I think a lot of queer people have some kind of dysfunctional relationship, and we have this dysfunctional relationship as a coping mechanism because of shame or unaddressed shame. So for me, growing up, it was mostly like overworking because I couldn't feel any good about who I was. So the only way I could like find any source of self-esteem was, say, doing really well in school or building something and trying to get validation for that. And I'm trying to kind of like disengage from that. But I think also dysfunctional relationship with alcohol. So I was drinking a lot when I was much younger. But because of those dysfunctional relationships I had with certain factors and things in my life, therapy was like really helpful for me for the first time because it helped me understand how all that linked together with my childhood experiences of shame. And then going to therapy and then leaving a session one day, I'm like, oh my God, actually, I think all my friends need this. I was like looking at all my friends, like we're all kind of, have these unaddressed things that we can see the haphazard ways or the harmful coping mechanisms we have in order to deal with, I think, the very many years of trauma or stress that queer people have had to experience. So yeah, therapy really helped me and then gave me an idea to start Voda and create mental health support that really understands LGBT people.
I'm sure you had some low moments as well.
I've never really had low moments from doing the work. And being Asian and growing up in Singapore and studying through the Singapore education system, I think a lot of people, it's very easy to just work out long hours and not feel really tired, I guess. But I think for me, the hardest things would, I think, the social part of things. I
Yeah.
think I was in both situations, but especially a lot more for traction was when the imposter syndrome was in full effect with asking for less equity for myself, so not really advocating for myself, but also overthinking certain interactions. I had a lot of social anxiety, which has been greatly reduced now. But I remember, I think one of the investors went to my co-founder and said that he thought he thought I was very arrogant, which really surprised me because I was on a phone call looking really stern, but actually I was very anxious. The hardest part for me in building Voda now, the struggle was more like personal for me. After going to therapy and also thinking, okay, I want to start a LGBT focused mental health app and be the founder and the CEO of it, it also meant that I had to come out to my parents in order to do that. Thankfully, I have two sisters who are very supportive and have been for quite many years before I came out to my parents. But my parents were like the last big hurdle for me. And that was the hardest thing I had to do. That was the hardest thing I had to do, I think, coming out. But actually, the post coming out was also really hard because I actually felt, I think, really unsafe in my body. So I think I have like nightmares for a while after coming out to my parents because I felt like now the secret is out. I mean, in hindsight, they reacted quite okay, but it was COVID as well. So I had to do it on virtually, which is great. So that was the hardest part for Voda, was coming out to my parents, because I think for a lot of founders, the hardest part for them is like rejection from fundraising
Yes.
and the fear of failure. But I think like, I don't care if investors don't invest. I'm like, my parents still care. So like, I didn't lose that. I think if your parents reject you, you don't have another set of parents to pitch to.
Exactly.
You know, with investors, I don't care. I'm just knocking on the door. There's so many of them. I think entrepreneurship is inherently very queer. Queer as in you have to define norms. I think a
Yeah.
lot of aspiring founders, people that want to be a business owner, sometimes are afraid of, oh, what will my family think or my friends think? What will people think of me? You're really afraid. There's a lot of grappling in your mind with potential negative stories. But I think a lot of queer people have really gone through that.
Thanks for sharing that, Jaron. Now we take a little break. We do a little rapid fire question. A belief that you outgrew.
I have to do things alone, that I can't rely on anyone. I grew up very often with instinct that if there's something wrong in my life, I just have to try to fix it myself.
Yeah.
And so that belief I have now unlearned, because now it doesn't come naturally for me to reach out to an investor for introductions or support, or ask a different other founder for help. Oftentimes I just want to figure things out myself. And I think with therapy, I'm able to like really trust in community more, because it really does take a village to build a business, and we've not been able to get to where we are today, or close to investment rounds, or build a team that we have.
A founder habit that actually changed your performance.
Founder habit. Journal. I journal every day. I get all my thoughts out. That's really helped me reduce my fear of overthinking, but also allows me to go back and see how far I've come. Like go back to a year ago with my recent investment round. I think I still struggle with that imposter syndrome a lot. Like when we got our first term sheet, the huge moment was, oh shit, like I think the day like, I was like, oh, was like when I was in Antler, where I was like, oh, like, am I going to be found out? I'm like, actually, I'm not as great as they think we are. But being able to look past on that and see how far we've come really helps to, I think, change my perspective. And that, oh, actually, a lot of the things that I thought I couldn't have done, if I just kind of keep calm and keep going at it, you eventually get done.
One mistake you still think about.
In the first few times when we pitch Voda, we would get quite far and get to investment committee stage, but then we wouldn't make the final cut. I think we needed to not get those investors so we could learn the lesson from it, and then go to the next investor with a greater level of conviction, because we have worked out the previous issues that the previous investors have flagged. But I'm glad that happened the way it did, because then when subsequent investors came in, actually we got a much better valuation and pricing. So the first few investors that I didn't get actually worked out to be a blessing in disguise, because it got me a better offer. So I think those mistakes or failures, it's really important to see it as a learning opportunity that helps you get to your next goal.
You think it's like a feedback loop?
Yes, I think it's because the framing of the question is very interesting to me, because it's all a matter of perspective. I chanced upon this saying recently. It's called pronoia. So paranoia is the fear that things will go wrong or the universe is out to get you. I've been really leaning into this like spiritual mindset of pronoia recently. It's like, what if the universe just really wants you to succeed? If I didn't have those really difficult experiences for me as a kid, I would not have the great investors I have today if the first few didn't say no to us.
One lesson that cost you the most?
If you don't believe in what you're selling, even if you have the most charismatic and beautiful presentation, people can sense it. They're like, you don't really believe in what you're building anymore. So it's really important to do that self-inquiry, because I think for Voda, oftentimes we're like, oh yeah, this doesn't work. In my case, if I just took what the first few investors said and not push back or not do my own research to circumvent that, then I think future investors wouldn't have come on board. My advice for founders is to take the feedback from the first rejections you have very seriously, and then form your narrative around it. And it's very important that when you go out and pitch your business and sell your business, that you truly and very strongly believe in what you're selling.
That concludes our rapid fire. When you talk about Voda, is that it's a lived experience. The entire app is your lived experience, and that's how you build it. Do you think building a product, it's slightly easier if you've already lived the experience, if you're the ideal customer of the product?
I think absolutely. I think even if you are, I think you can have people in a team that doesn't have that lived experience, but I think really as a founder, it's really important that you gather that information in order to build your business. So a lot of what has come with Voda, for example, is one of our key propositions that we are very discreet. We're a discreet app. So the app is designed such that the icon looks like it just sits on your phone. We don't put rainbows everywhere on the app, because and that comes from personal life experience from when I was much younger. So that also helped me understand that a lot of queer people are not able to get the help that they need, even from, say, the NHS, because they're afraid to come out. And this is particularly true today for transgender and non-binary people. Secondly, the content is also tailored to you based on who you are. And thirdly, in terms of accessibility as well, most of our resources for trans and non-binary people are also free, because we understand the greater level of need that they have. But at the same time, people who are gender diverse also face a lot more financial difficulties. So this is evidence-based and data-driven.
You built traction, which was something not really impact-driven, whereas Artisan and Fox and Voda, both are impact-based businesses. What's the difference of building those two?
I have found Voda and Artisan Fox to be a lot more meaningful for me. With Artisan Fox, I got to meet people and experience cultures that I otherwise wouldn't have to. And with Voda, it is also very healing for myself in helping people like me, because the conditions I experience. So having work that has so much meaning, I think, really drives me. And so then it doesn't feel like work. And it feels like I'm building towards something that's really important. And the great thing as well, which really, I think, would encourage people to start impact-focused business as well, is you get the best people around you. Like I've been very lucky to have, and so we raised close to £1 million for Voda, and angel investors and the venture capitalists that we have on board, from interfacing with them publicly, privately, and as friends, they're just genuinely good people that want to make the world better. I really recommend building an impact company, because there's so many great support out there.
Last question. What would your advice be to young queer founders just starting out?
Find community. There's so many great communities now and networks for LGBTQIA+ founders. What I've seen in the space is just founders uplifting founders. And, feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll get my email address somewhere on LinkedIn. I'm always very happy to help other founders who are closing around, and make introductions to other founders in the same space. Another advice I would have is to work on your past experiences of shame and a very genuine and radically honest self-inquiry as to where that still show up. What is your coping mechanism when your experiences of shame shows up? Do you avoid, or are you a people pleaser, or do you just get extremely stimulated and anxious? I think that really helps.
Can we quickly just name some of them for our viewers?
There's a few really great communities for LGBT founders. So one is called Start Out, and they are based in the US, but they support founders around the world. They will work with them at some point. There's also Identity Ventures, Identity VC, which is a European fund that invests in LGBTQIA plus founders. There's also Angels, which is one of the investors. They invest in diverse teams and underrepresented founders.
All the links would be in the description. Thank you so much, Jaron. This was an amazing episode.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me. Thank you.